Well, I think there's really one universal law. Most all the other laws are derived from this one law, and it's just called the law of the one and the many. And I think that's the most significant law that a person can comprehend. If they understand that, they'll and see its ramifications in all of the different disciplines. Man, it's amazing. The law of the one and the many says that from the one comes the many, and from the many come the one. Now, from a cosmogenesis, we have in the models of the Big Bang model, the singularity model, we have this singularity point, which is a Planck's dimensional singularity that emerges with the expansion of space-time, the manifestation of longer wavelengths, the emergence of pre-nuclear, nuclear, atomic, molecular structures, radiation. We merge from singularity into radiation to eventually create super massive galaxy clusters that have supermassive black holes. So from the one come these many super galaxy clusters, but inside the galaxy clusters there's massive black hole gravitational systems that return it back to one. So from the one, through radiation comes the many, and from the radiation and the many come now the one, and recycle itself. So this law of radiation and gravitation is another name for the law of the one and the many. From the one to the many is radiation, from the many to the one is gravitation. Because gravitation is radii coming into a singular point, and radiation is from one point into expansion. So these two primary forces, gravity and electromagnetism, are basically universal expressions of a law. So that law of the one and many shows up there. Now, if we go into mathematics, we can integrate and differentiate. We can move towards oneness, or we can move towards manyness. We can move towards a singularity, or move towards a multiplicity. So duality is the junction between the one and the many. So the laws of duality are a law built out of the one and the many law that oscillates. In sociology, we have monarchies and democracies. If we get too close to the monarchy, we have forces to make it a democracy. And if we have too close to the democracy, we have forces to come up with a new leader that's a monarch again. So nature tends to come to a center point between them. If you're in relationships with many people, you're looking for a special one. When you got the one, you're always wondering about the many. So in human behavior, that law is occurring. In chemistry, we have the tendency to associate and dissociative chemistries. We have nucleophilic and electrophilic substitution reactions that are basically attraction-repulsion systems again. So oxidation, moving up, and expansion, and reduction, moving down and contraction. So these laws, phototropic, gravitropic, and growth of plants in human beings, elation and depression, which is an expansion of ourself and a constriction of ourself, these pairs of opposites are the expressions of the law of the one to many. And from what I can tell, that is the most universal of all laws. Entropy and syntropy, or negentropy, is a law from the one to the many and the many to the one again. So all the physics that we have appears to be derived from that. So if we just spent our life studying that, we would probably have the greatest depth of understanding by just studying that law. The great book of the Western World Britannica series in the Great Ideas has a chapter on the one and the many that is also called the law of similars and differences, the laws of unity and diversity, the laws of peace and war, the laws of ease and difficulty. All pairs of opposites, if you look at them, are synonyms and antonyms in language. It's all the law of the one and many. I don't know of a discipline that I've come across that doesn't have that applied. So that is the most universal of all laws I've ever studied. And if you look at geology, you've got plumes, which are rising from the singularity out into the many, expanding, and plunges, cooling, going down. So heat and cool. Meteorology has that same thing. Biology has that. If you look at corporations, you have many people that initiate little companies that eventually merger and acquisition to move towards one big one, and then they disperse into entrepreneurs again. And this is a major. Mountains, urology, same thing. You get a subduction zones where one is making a mountain and a subduction this way, which is moving together towards oneness. And then you have ridges moving apart from each other. So in every discipline, that law of the one and many keeps holding true. So I wanted to study the most universal laws and then see how they apply to human behavior. So that means for every person that's wanting to be close to you, there'll be somebody wanting to be away from you. A conservation of linear momentum, you might say. Every time you have a vicious cycle, you have a virtuous cycle. So a vicious cycle is a disbursement of your energy. A virtuous cycle is a concentration of energy. And so these are, again, the law of the one and many. I mean, I could just go on and on, different disciplines. In physics, the same thing occurs in forces. You can't have a force going towards a concentration towards something without a disbursement somewhere else. We see this in gravity. We see this in magnetism. We have something going out on one pole and coming in on the other pole. So I haven't seen that law violated yet. There was an article called In Search of the Monopole that was written around 1981 that a group of scientists were trying to find a monopole. And even in quantum theories, vacuum phenomenon theories that they have come up with to try to explain that in the vacuum theory there's monopoles zipping in and out of existence, I question that. I believe that they're entangled with other monopoles and they're just not putting the two together. And when they put those two together, they'll see that they're not really monopoles. But they're believing that they're temporarily borrowing energy from a monopole. But in psychology, the same thing occurs. We have these fantasies that there's depression without elation, but I don't find this to be true. I've proven that in too many thousands of people's lives over and over again that these don't exist one without the other. So there's universal laws applied in human behavior. That's why I think there's a hard science to be emerged out of these laws. And I've been accumulating slowly but surely different representations of these laws in human society. And they're there. Michael Penn, in his book on microtrends, addressed it. He showed this. Heraclitus showed it when there was complementations of opposites. If you look at Aristotle, he talked about it in his Contraries. And oppositions, if you study the great books, you'll see there's a chapter called Opposition. And it's well worth reading because it shows these pairs of opposites. And heat and cold. Well, heat is rising, expansion, cold is cooling and condensing. When you have emotions, you have hot and cold emotions. You warm up to people, you cool down to people. Infatuation, attraction, repulsion, disbursement. I don't know of anywhere it's not there. In physiology, you have oxidation reduction inside the physiology. In diseases, in acupuncture, you have yin and yang in the energy of the body. And what I'm working on right now is those phenomenon inside every disease. If there's a disease, there's an anti-disease, and I'm trying to find how it's dispersed. If it's concentrated in one form of disease, that same symptomatology is counterbalanced somewhere else in the physiology. So uncovering that will give us insights to the future of healing. So that's the most universal law I know of.